We're back now at 8:20. Matt Damon has certainly made his mark on Hollywood. Among the highlights, his Oscar with friend Ben Affleck for Best Original Screenplay for Good Will Hunting. Well, 15 years later, he's playing the role of co-writer and co-star again in his new movie. It's called Promised Land. Matt Damon, good to have you back. Good morning.
Good morning, Matt.
I thought we had a deal. I thought we had a deal.
See, I would have said I'm in between looks because I'm growing my hair back, but I'm busting the lower.
You told me you were gonna stay bald for life. You're growing it back because you can.
Well, no, because it's getting cold, man.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. It looks good. It looks
good. A little coverage.
John Krasinski was here yesterday, and the way he tells the story, he's basically having dinner with you and your wife and his wife, and he tells you about this project, and you were in that quickly. Why?
Well, one, because it was John. He's just a really talented guy, and people don't even, I think, quite, I knew him from The Office and was a fan of his in the show, but the kind of scope and breadth of his talent is so much more vast than that, and as I got to know him, I really wanted to work with him.
You think because he's a sitcom actor, or started that way, at least became known to us, that sometimes people don't take him seriously enough?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to when I met George Clooney, years and years ago, and everybody knew him he was the guy from ER, but Steven Soderbergh did a movie with him and instantly formed a company with him, and everybody in Hollywood was going, what is Steven Soderbergh doing forming a company with the guy from ER? But what Steven knew was, people didn't quite really know what George was capable of, and I think the same's true with John.
The storyline here could almost be ripped from the headlines. It's probably a story that's playing out in towns across the country. You play a guy trying to convince people in a town to allow a company to come in and do some drilling,
right. And
he plays an environmentalist who tries to stop you. Is your character a good guy or a bad guy?
Well, what we wanted with all the characters was for them to all feel real, like people we know. We didn't want it to be. We didn't want anyone to feel one-dimensional. My guy's absolutely convinced that he comes from a farming town that where the factory closed and the industry dried up and the town was just hollowed out, and so he's got this real commitment to going back to these places and trying to bring industry to try to revive these towns. And if you go to these towns, like where we shot, we were in rural Pennsylvania. People are very divided about this, but feel very strongly because you talk to these people who have these family farms that are literally being saved by these leases that are being signed.
And what I found interesting as I watched it is that your character comes across as a good guy with his heart in the right place until John's character puts him on the defensive and makes him look like a bully.
Yeah, and I mean, it's essentially it's in the vein of those old Kazan movies that I loved, where you have a protagonist who's conflicted and he's he maybe has that great streak of self-loathing, and it's a complex issue, so the characters are all very complex, but again, like, relatable. Like every single character in this movie, we worked really hard to make sure that we felt like we knew those people in our real lives.
When John was here, he was talking about the writing of the screenplay, which you two did together, and he basically said that you're now going around taking all the credit for the screenplay, much the way that Ben Affleck did with you back with Good Will Hunting. Is that fair?
John is just trying to ditch me and get Ben as a writing partner. Now that Ben's an A-list director, John knows where the bread is buttered.
By the way, you were going to direct this.
I was, yeah. Well, that was the original plan, and then just for personal reasons, the movie that I had shaved my head for last year went long, and I was away from my kids, and I was going to have to leave them right away again, and it just was too much. So we got that hack Gus Van Sant to come and direct it.
Poor thing. You had to really we slummed it a little bit.
The best thing I did as a producer of this movie was fire myself.
Yeah, it's not bad. Michael Douglas, after screening Promised Land, said this about you. He said, "In Promised Land, you get a chance to see Matt's inherent likability. Some actors have that quality, some don't. And that likability is necessary to play this kind of scam artist and still be as caring as you are for his trip."
That was very
Make any sense
nice
to you?
of Michael to say that. Michael and I played lovers in this Liberace movie, so
I'm glad you brought that up.
I think he's, that's very nice of him, obviously coming from someone of that stature, too. I don't know how to take a compliment like that.
Well, it's all right. Just take it.
I'll just take it and shut up.
Well, Promised Land opens December 20th.